it's the Algebra Teacher Goes Power BI, and this week I've got a few things I wanted to show. One is how the service works, the very basics of the service, making a report, publishing a report, and making a dashboard out of it, and also some things that I decided that if I really would have known how Power BI worked, if I would have known about Power BI before I stopped being a teacher and transitioned into this field, I could have saved a lot of time and a lot of effort on my part when analyzing student data. So if any of you are new to Power BI and you're coming from a teacher background, hopefully this can inspire you to make some changes in the classroom and save you some time. So with that being said, let's get into what I've got planned for this video. We're going to make this a lot better and get rid of me. So I always like to show you, after getting some feedback on Twitter, of how I get my data sources and how I come up with them. And I think that's always good to know because you understand the data source to begin with. So what I did is I just made a really quick sample gradebook Excel spreadsheet, because when I was working for the schools, we could always download our gradebooks into Excel, and it would look something similar to this. So I just came up with some random student names, the period that they were in, and all the assignments, whether it was a homework, a test, or a quiz. And this could be updated, as the quarter goes on. So from there, what I went into is into Power BI, and you're seeing the finished product now, but of course I went into Get Data, I made that connection, and I went straight into transforming it into the Power Query Editor. Now, this is what it looked like currently after I pulled it in from Excel, and I realized that this was not going to do what I needed it to do. One being because if I took a look at all of my columns after period, they were all basically the same thing. They were just separate assignment categories. And when you see something like that and you're trying to figure out, we want to have less columns and more rows of data, because that's going to help with the compression and the data compression of Power BI and also our calculations, I decided to do an unpivot. So I selected name and period, I selected both of them, and I did unpivot other columns. And so now this is what the data now look like after that step. From there, what I did is I needed to rename my columns. So these were all of my assignments, and these were all of their grades. So I did a renaming of columns, and this is what we currently have, assignment and grade. Then I took a look, and we have something really bad right away. Anytime that you get new columns or you do any kind of changing of things, if you have that ABC123 data type, that's usually not a good thing. We always want to make it more specific than that. And these were all just going to be whole number values. That's how my gradebooks were set up. I didn't use any decimals like 98.2. I just always did rounding. So I changed this as my next step. I changed it into a whole number. So we changed the type and changed it to a whole number. Then the next thing I wanted to do, and I didn't do this right away, I went over, I started building my report. So I went over, started building my report, and it was looking good. But then I realized I wanted to evaluate things on an overall generic category of how did the homework, all homeworks look, or how did all the tests look. And so in order to get the slicer in here, I needed to make an assignment category column. So I went back into the Power Query Editor by going into Transform Data, which brought me back into the Power Query Editor. And I realized I wanted to get a separate column that just had homework or test or quiz. And so I took the easy way out because, if there's an easy step to do, might as well do the easy thing rather than doing the hard steps. And if you haven't taken advantage of the add column from examples, it's your best friend. So I just did add column from examples, and it pulled up a separate column here. And let me just click it right now. We can try to. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to mess up the query itself. But it pulls up a separate column, and you just start typing in what you want. So I just started typing in HW, and then I typed in HW again, and it figured out what I wanted, and it said, "Oh, this is what you're actually wanting. You are trying to pull out everything before the space in the assignment column name," which is exactly what I was doing. Could I have done separate by delimiter column and stuff? Split the column by delimiter. I could have, but I took the easy way out. And the last thing I did was just kind of a user thing. HW, if someone else was looking at this, the educator would know HW means homework. But if not, I wanted to make it super clear. So I did a replace value. So I did a right click, and I did a replace value step to where I turned all the HWs into homework. And then finally, I renamed it from text before delimiter to assignment category. So this is my final working of the data itself. So anytime I refresh my Excel spreadsheet, if I put in a homework or a test column or a quiz column, it's gonna perform all of these steps for me. It's just gonna add the records into this data set. So then I went over and started making the report itself. And so this is the report that I came up with, because I know this would have benefited me as a teacher, to show my students upon entering into the classroom, I could do things to where they see. I made some cards here where I made some averages, what the current class average for all of their grades, what the median is, and then first period can compare themselves to second period with the average as well as the median. I choose to put the median in here as well, because when I was teaching algebra and algebra 2, we talked about how statistics can kind of paint a story, but it's not always the true part of the story. It can either lead yourself into thinking you're doing really well, or you're not, or you're doing better than what people think you're doing, kind of thing. So I always like to put the median as part of that. But that's just a teacher thing there. And so I did some conditional formatting on these. So again, just going to show you a few things that I did. Main thing I want to talk about is publishing to the service. But what I did is for these cards, I brought the grade over, I changed it over to show the median, and then I did some formatting with the cards. If you didn't know that, you could do that. So I went and into the card, what I did for the background is I did some conditional formatting for my cards to based on if it was, I did a conditional formatting of, let's pull this up here so you can actually see it. I did, if it was 60, that's red, 100 is green, and you got that, I put that 80 as that medium gold. So you can start seeing based on colors how things are going. I also put some slicers in here based on all of their assignments, the period, etc. I changed that these cards themselves will not change values based on if I pick certain periods, because I want this to all show. I don't want these to be altered by the actual filters themselves. And I put a little line chart down here to show how things are moving up or down. So let's just take a quick look. If I click on homework grades, these are going to be all the homework grades for first and second period. And I can see that homework number 2 was obviously better than homework number 1. I can compare each class to itself. I can then even be more specific, and I can pick homework 1 that I want to really focus in on. And so we can see how the colors are changing here based on that diverging. If I click on period 1, notice that this doesn't change. I didn't have my cards change based on period 1 because I still wanted these to be unaffected by the period itself. So I always wanted to be able to compare. When I click 2, I still want to see first period numbers. So I did that. If we don't know this trick yet, if you click on a visual and you click on format and you go to edit interactions, you have these options here to pick if you want these to be filtered based off of your slicer. And so I had clicked on the none. I don't want these to be affected by this slicer at all. And then you can click each one. So then so like if I click on the category, now these I do want to be filtered down. So here I don't have the none selected. So this slicer will affect these cards. However, this slicer will not be affected. So that's something that I did there. And let's talk about one other thing I did with this report. It's a new preview feature that's in here. You can put shadows around your boxes, which might not seem like a big deal, but I thought it added a little bit of extra, like it looks like its own separate section over here. So I just did a top left shadow, top right shadow, etc. So this is the generic part and how we can use our report. So I'm going to come back over here to format. Edit interaction is going to get rid of that. All right, so now what do we do when we finally have a report? Well, I could easily just put this up in my classroom and show this every day, and they would see all of these extra little things here, and they'd see this ribbon, which is fine, but I can also publish this to the service, which is what I want to talk to. So when you're ready to publish to the service, there's only one thing that you need in order to do this. You need a Power BI free account. As long as you're not going to share this with others, meaning you're not going to invite other people into the web space that you have, a free account is all you need. So the way we publish something is we're on the home ribbon. We're going to come over here to the publish button. We're going to click on it. And it says, if you make any changes, it's going to say, do you want to save your changes? So I'll click save for now. So it's going to go through into the Power Query Editor because I went down and I changed a few little things before the demo. And it's going to save this. We're going to go to saving the content. Now it's going to say you're ready to publish. If you have a free account, you're only going to have one option at this point. Your free account is only going to have the My Workspace option. All right, all these other workspaces in here are ones that I've created within my organization or that people in my organization have created to share with me. A workspace is like a big folder of where you're going to house things. It's just an organization system is all it comes down to. Now your My Workspace is yours and yours alone. And it's going to come with some limitations because of that. And we're going to talk about those. So for right now, I'm going to publish it to My Workspace. I'm going to click Select. And it's going to start working on it. And it says you already have a data set here, because I did this earlier to make sure everything was going to work. And so this is something I want to bring up, is that if you publish to a workspace, a report, and then 3 weeks later you go back and work on that report and you decide to publish it again, it's going to ask you to publish it to that same workspace, and it's going to overwrite anything that you currently have done in that workspace if you're using the same data set. So I'm going to click on Replace to overwrite it. So anything that I had done previous to now, those things in the Power BI service are no longer going to be there. So after you publish, you're going to have a few options that are available to you. The first thing that you can do is go straight to it and open it up into Power BI. The second thing you can do is called what's get quick insights, where Power BI is going to run some algorithms on your data sets to come up with some insights about your data, giving you some correlations. They're going to look for some trends, some patterns, and things that maybe you didn't see right away. That is kind of like, oh, did you know this was happening? Did you notice that as the homeworks were getting more and more, the grades were going up, or vice something around those lines? And the last major thing that we have is just the got it. Say, okay, it's published. I don't want to go look at it. I'm just going to click got it. For this purpose, I'm going to just go to, let's go open it up on the service. So I'm going to click on that. And it's going to take me to the Power BI service. Well, it should. Let's go back here. Let's open this up. See if my internet's working well. All right, good. Get rid of this. And when it comes in here, like this, you might have to sign in if you have not signed in yet. Get rid of those. And this is now in My Workspace. Okay, so your My Workspace will be listed over here on the left-hand panel. And under My Workspace, anything you publish to My Workspace is going to show up here. So I'm going to expand this down. And this is everything I've ever put into My Workspace. So let me zoom in here. So I'm under Reports, and there I'm at, Gradebook Demo. So what can you do here that you have it in My Workspace? You got a lot of the same things that you could do earlier on the pages. We can put some filters in here. I can decide to come up here. Now the share thing I cannot do because it's in a My Workspace. That would be operating under a free account, so to speak, unless you publish this to the web. Now if you publish to the web, that means anyone and everyone can see it, and they can also see your underlying data sets. So that's always something to be very cautious of. If you know you have sensitive data, not something you really want to do. But in here, I can interact with it the same way. So let's say I want to get rid of the homework filter that I had a second ago. Because if we notice the way that this was published, it was published the exact same way that we had it in its original state down here with all the current filter selections. So let's say I want to look at period 1, and I want to look at test number 1. And so we see that this is all working in the same fashion that it would have worked on the desktop version itself. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is this concept of dashboards. What a dashboard will do, because currently this is just a report, and I could show this to my students right now if I wanted to, or I could make a dashboard. And what a dashboard is dashboards, and this is one that we can make. So a dashboard is like a corkboard, so to speak, where you pin really important information that you want somebody to know about. Kind of like I consider it like a bulletin board, like when you walk into the front office of whatever work you're at and you look for all the important announcements. And if you see that someone, for example, maybe put up there that they have a couch for sale and they're trying to get rid of it. Well, you don't have all the details about it because it says couch for sale, come see John. And so you go, okay, that's when I need to go see John. Let me go get some more information about it. That's kind of like what a dashboard is. So let me show you. Let's say I want to pin the first period average to a dashboard. So what I've done is I'll click on this actual tile. I click on the pin button. And then it's going to ask me, do I want to pin it to an existing dashboard or a new dashboard? I'm going to do a new dashboard. And I'm going to call this the walk-in class. So this is what I want my students to see when they walk into my class. I click on pin. And from there, this can be annoying. Every single time you pin something, you're going to get this little outline box that comes up. And it's going to say, do you want to, I just clicked on the X when I did that, so let me pin one more thing on there. Let me pin this guy. So I click on the visual, click pin, existing dashboard. I have one now. I want it to be the walk-in class. I'm going to click pin. And now I'm not going to, so your two options are to create your phone view or go to dashboard. We're not going to talk about phone view in this video. But if we click on go to dashboard in a second, it would take me straight to the dashboard. So the other way to get to your dashboard is if you don't click on go up here, is you go into the dashboards underneath my workspace and you start looking for it. And there it is, walk-in class. So I'm going to click on walk-in class. And here's my dashboard. Now, something to be cognizant of is you see this first period average of 41. So right now, this tile came from my report, but this tile was filtered down. If you don't remember what I had clicked on, let me go back to it. Let's see, Gradebook Demo. This 41 was filtered down by test number 1 and first period. So whenever you pin something, it's going to take the filters from what it currently was stated. It's kind of like a bookmark, so to speak, of what you had just seen. So let's say I really wanted that. I don't, but let's say that's something I wanted to show. And maybe for that day I did. So when I go to my dashboard, which is my walk-in class, I have an option here. If we click on the 3 ellipses next to first period average, I can come down and I can click on Edit Details. When I click on Edit Details, the current title is first period average because that's what it was in our workbook, or in our report, sorry. So now I could say this was the first period test number 1 average. And if I click apply, I now have the exact title for that one. So that is one of the things about with tiles themselves, when you pin them, they're always going to have that filter take place. The next question I usually get is, do I need a dashboard? No, you don't need a dashboard, because here's some of the limitations. We just talked about it's going to keep a filter. So now if you want to go, well, what was second period's average? With this dashboard that we've sent, we couldn't show that. But remember what I talked about earlier about the bulletin board? And I wanted to talk to John about that sofa or that couch being sold. Well, if I click on a visual from a dashboard, watch what happens. This is going to take you to the underlying report. Notice I'm now back on the report page where this tile actually came from. And now once I'm on the report page, I can start doing everything that I want to with the filters. I can start moving them around of how I want, period, test, etc. So in some instances, it might not be great for you to actually have a dashboard. Maybe you just want, if you want full interactivity with your report, and you still want it to be on a dashboard, which is your prerogative, you can do that. And the way we can pin a whole report to a dashboard. The way we do that is I'm going to click on more options, and it says pin a live page. So I'm going to click pin a live page. And here's what's going to happen with that. It's going to say, well, where do you want this? Let's just put it on our existing dashboard, walk-in class. I'm going to click on pin live. I'm going to go to the dashboard. So these were the two things that we had pinned up here earlier. But now look here. Now we have the whole page that has been pinned on here. Now it has the full interactivity of doing all of our slicers. Things are being filtered based on who I'm selecting. So if I do test number 1 and test number 2, I see that we are going to get both, and they're going to average the both of these for me. If I click on the test up here for the assignment category. So it has that full, and I got just Bill here, so let me undo Bill. And so now I see everyone who's gotten test number 1 and test number 2, because Bill didn't, it shows what you would have seen back over here onto our regular gradebook demo. Okay, so that's where, let me click off of here and come back to our service page. So that's where you decide what you want. Do you want a dashboard to have call out values and some cool visuals to get people interested, and then they click on them to see the underlying report? Or maybe you just need one report page only. The only other reason that a dashboard might make sense to you is if you noticed, I have a whole bunch of reports in my workspace. And what you can do with the dashboard is it doesn't have to just come from one report. So let's say I go to this old example that I did on Coalesce, and this was a report that I'd made a month or so ago. And so this is from a completely different data set, completely different report. But if I click on a visual and I click on pin, I can put that back on that existing dashboard. So let me go to that dashboard. So now this dashboard has some education test stuff, but then at the very bottom it's also got this random dashboard tile from a completely different report. So this is more use case scenario if you have different departments talking and you're trying to show the head boss, so to speak. Here's everything that's going on currently today with what you need to know. Here's some data from HR. Here's some data from the finance department. Here's some data from your marketing team. Here's a quick, let me whet your appetite, give you an idea of what's happening. So that's just what you can do. And one last thing I do want to point out about dashboards, that you do have this option in here to change to make a dashboard theme. So I'm on a dashboard. I did the 3 ellipses, well, just the ellipses. It's 3 of them. And just something, if you didn't know, because it's something that's not used as much, you can change the theme, and you can make custom ones as well of the dashboard itself. So a lot of times, if you see this as you're looking at examples on the web, and you see, well, how they get all this black behind it, it's because they just went over here and they did a dashboard theme. All right, so I hope this helps you out. Again, as a teacher, this would have been great because anytime my gradebook would have been updated, I would have just gone into my Power BI report and I could click on refresh the data. If I'm just using it in the Power BI program, and everything would have been refreshed, I would have had all these new assignments that would show up. I would have new periods if they were added in, etc. And then also, if we come up to here and to the service itself, and I schedule a data refresh, which will be a future video down the road, and there's tons of them out there if you're trying to do scheduled data refreshes, it would also update on the web version as well. So hopefully this is helpful, inspired you, and gave you some ideas of how you could use this, especially as an educator, in your classroom. If you have any questions about how I've done any of my measures, any of the cards, etc., please feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'd love to help you out.